Right. Over to you, Chetan.
Sure. Thank you, Sunil, and thanks for the introduction, Dr. Rajiv. I think this is the right time to be talking about cybersecurity if you've not already started your practices. So I am Chetan Anand. I'm the CEO and co-founder at Seconize. So we are a cybersecurity startup in the cyber risk and compliance management space. We are being incubated as part of NASSCOM here in Bangalore, India. And we're also part of the Data Security Council of India, which Sunil just outlined now. We are part of the Center of Excellence for Cybersecurity Startups out here. We're also part of the Cybersecurity Excellence Center in Karnataka. And happy to say that we are also the winners of the first round of the Cybersecurity Grand Challenge that is being run by the Government of India along with METI and DSCI. That shows that how serious the government is about cybersecurity as well, because it's got an important role to play in the nation's economy as such. So I'll be talking more about the healthcare sector and the medical devices, because all of you audience are from that sector. So if you can see, what is happening as we see it, right, from the healthcare sector and the medical sector, these are some of the aspects. So you can recognize very well there is a pacemaker out there, which is life-saving, critical for all the heart patients. And this is also, it runs on battery. It is an electronic device, if you look at it, and it also can be calibrated remotely. If you start seeing, the other technologies that is available, even the ICU is now monitored remotely. So you don't have people all the time in the ICU. So you can have a lot of technology as well going on over here, which is image processing. So you don't have to really monitor. The machine itself will monitor for you. So if you have things like, patient falling off the bed and you need to be alerted, so you will get alerted. So what is happening? This is being monitored from remote places like a nursing station, or it can be done from anywhere. And of course, we are seeing that there is a lot more prevalence of telemedicine now. Simple cases like doctor appointment systems, where you go and look up a doctor and then schedule an appointment, which can be followed by even a complete remote consultation. And in the remote consultation, it can be a pure oral one, or you can have physiological devices attached to the patient, and then the doctor can see all the parameters on their screen. If you take a look at little more advancement in this area. And also, I think right now medical tourism has probably decreased in India, but that's an industry that was picking up. You have like digital hospitals as well, connected hospitals. You have a lot of patients coming from outer countries who want kind of sophistication in this area. So you can have a complete digital hospital. What I've shown here is that you can replace the TV there with a complete connected system. You can have the patient, calling out a doctor. The patient can see which is doctors attending them, what are the patients. They can even order their, medicines from that system. They can even show their food preferences. They can even do video calling with their family. So it is entirely connected over here. So what you're seeing across all these things, what is common is that you have devices, you have firmwares, you have hardware, you have systems, you have telecommunications happening. Across all of these, it is connected in some way or the other. And if it is connected, then all of these is hackable. If not, all of these have been hacked already, including the pacemaker that you see out here. So there's a fundamental shift that is happening. Everybody is moving to digitization. We saw it in India with demonetization. Everybody moved to digitization. Now with the COVID pandemic, even the healthcare sector is completely moving to digitization. So you look at any kind of company today. You look at an Ola, which is cab sharing, it is a digital company. You look at Swiggy, which is food, it's a digital company. So there's a fundamental shift happening. So every company is becoming digital company. While that is happening, it is creating a lot of opportunities as well. But be aware that this comes with enormous amount of risk as well. So while it is good, while if it is done well, it is good for the organizations. If not done, it is a huge risk for the organizations. And while this shift is happening, there is also a shift in terms of the asset base that is increasing for the organizations, the digital asset base. So it is understood that it is around 85% of the company's assets across different verticals are in the digital format today. So if it is in a digital format, that poses one of the highest risks for the organizations, if not the highest risk for any of the organizations for doing business today. And if you're thinking that, the attacks happen only to the large companies, it happened for ReadyLabs, they are very big and it's not going to happen to the, smaller ones. The attackers don't distinguish, right? All the companies are attacked, and almost half of the attacks are directed towards the smaller companies. And out of those, whoever gets attacked, more than 50% of them actually shut shop within 6 months after a major incident because they're not able to cope with those attacks. And the amount that is lost, which is substantial, $600 billion was lost last year, compared to around $60 billion that is required even to eradicate world hunger. So this is very huge, and this number is just growing year over year. And the average cost per incident when somebody is affected, it is around $4 million. Again, in India, it's around the same. But again, this is increasing year and over year. Not that companies are spending any less towards cybersecurity, but this is a bigger problem today. And Sunil highlighted about the workforce that we have, but that's again not sufficient, right? There's a huge shortage of workforce. So even if you are planning to get people on board, it is very difficult to get that workforce. And believe it or not, all the incidents that I've mentioned happened last year. 99% or plus of the root causes of those incidents were known earlier, were already known. So what does it mean? Either the organizations who got impacted did not know that this issue existed in their organization, or they did not know that this had to be fixed or this had to be prioritized. So fundamental shift, what we see is that organizations are embracing digitalization. Either you embrace it or you get left behind. But while doing so, do they really understand what risks they are taking in and what the risk or total exposure that they have towards cyber risk? Breaking it down into smaller pieces of what does cybersecurity itself mean. And if you look at, you must have heard of these words like vulnerability, threat. That I use some of the words, but if I have to break it down, then if you see anything that you use today, and if it is connected, then it reads. Think of it as it is vulnerable. It can be probed, it can be attacked, it can be exploited. So what is it? A vulnerability is generally a weakness anywhere in your systems, in your applications, in your communication layer, and such. Now, if I want to draw a parallel to the COVID scenario today, it is think of it, somebody having comorbidity who is susceptible, right? They either have an asthma or hypertension or diabetic patients, right? They are vulnerable over there. Now, thinking of a threat is something that can exploit that weakness, that can exploit that vulnerability. So there are different kinds of threats out there. The most that you've heard of is those again I mentioned about ransomware and so on. So this is one of the biggest in the healthcare industry, the threat. But again, if you draw parallels, it is like a virus, right? The coronavirus is sitting out there, which can act upon the weakness. So if you have a weakness, it can act upon that weakness. It can exploit that weakness. Next comes the threat actor themselves, who are the people who actually go and carry out some exploits. So in this case, it can be just any cyber criminals who are here after some monetary benefits, or it can be an insider threat as well, which is a disgruntled employee sitting inside the organization, or very sophisticated ones like nation state actors that you have seen, right? That is ongoing now, and especially given the situation in India, the border situation and everything. So we have a lot more attacks that we are seeing nowadays. And again, if you draw parallels, it can be a person carrying the sickness who knowingly or unknowingly is passing on that sickness to the others. And risk finally is a function of that particular threat acting upon a weakness and exploiting it. So it can result in a negative consequence for the organization. So in this case, losing data, in healthcare sector, again, data is everything. The patient health data is everything. Worst case, it may lead to even in the healthcare sector, it can lead to loss of lives. So in other industries, we talk about a lot of monetary impacts, but in the healthcare industry, it also leads to consequences like loss of lives. And again, here the risk is patient contracting that illness, can be hospitalized. It can be lead to very fatal consequences as well. Next is knowing all these things. What can the organizations do? So they can bring in some practices so that they can kind of reduce the risk, right? So that is called as the controls, wherein you bring in things like in the cybersecurity world, antivirus or a firewall that you can bring, or simple things like backing up the data. You're hit by ransomware, you have data backed up that you can use again. So in this case, simple things like wearing a mask, it will not completely eliminate the risk, but it will mitigate the risk to a large extent. So there is some things that you can do. But again, nothing is foolproof. Everything can be hacked. Everything can be exploited. So what you can do is best is how you can decrease your chances of getting impacted. Now, if you see real world scenarios, again, a lot of ones were highlighted by Dr. Rajiv. But the real world scenarios is, this recent incident you might have seen that happened in Germany, where a hospital, a ransomware attack happened, and the patient actually died. So it led to the worst case scenario over here, where a patient died. And if you have more time, I would advise you to go and read about this case, so you can see how an attack happens and what happens thereafter. So the police reached out to them, to the hackers, and the hackers actually intended to hack somebody else, and in the melee, life was lost. Again, if you look at, this is the worst case scenario, but if you look at the other one, the FDA finding out that there was a vulnerability. This is to do with an instrument in the hospital which can look at the physiological parameters of the patient and transmit it to the nursing station, or can be seen from anywhere. The FDA found that there was a weakness in that, where the attackers could come. So there's a vulnerability, there's a weakness exists in that system, in the software of the system, where the hackers could come and steal data and also alter the parameters. So whatever you see on the screen may not be the real data. So there is some data integrity loss that is happening out there. So this was identified well in advance and addressed. Now, with all these things, some of the numbers again was spoken by Dr. Rajiv. I think there is a lot more. He spoke about 37% increase, but if you see the reality, it is more than 500% increase that is happening. So it is 5 times, or depending upon the report that you see, it is much more there. And India is one of the highest attacked countries in the world today, competing for almost the top 3 slots, right? Which is good and bad in a way. And again, if you see what is happening, there's a lot more attacks happening today. The numbers say that 375 attacks per day and so on, but that is very minuscule. The reality is much higher, and the attackers are a lot more sophisticated now. They are all automated. They run bots, and anything that you have connected is susceptible today. So you are big or small, anything that you connect is being probed, and they will try to attack it for various reasons, right? Again, so if you look at what are the consequences for the organization in healthcare industry, it may be very disastrous. One is definitely loss of reputation, and other things leading to even loss of lives in some cases. And you may be thinking, I am not a victim today. Let me look at it after somebody else is attacked, or let me look at it later. But more chances, or very high chances, that you're already a victim and you may not know about it. That is the scenario today. And again, in some of the countries, it is by law that you are supposed to adopt the best practices and be compliant to the regulations. And it is fast catching up in India as well. The PDP laws, the Privacy Data Protection Bill, is being discussed now. Hopefully, it will be enacted soon with this. And I think there is also Disha that is there in India, which is being looked up. So in these cases, you're required by law to practice it. There will be penalties against it. And forget all these things. It is finally good for business. What is good for your customers is good for the organization. So the customers show greater confidence. So patient experience is becoming important in the healthcare sector. So the patient experience, they start looking up institutions where they're also secure, where they feel that their data is secure. So if that is the case, then it's also good for business. So it's high time that the organizations start adopting good practices if they have not already done so. And to the question of should you be concerned, I think this answers very well that you should start today if you have not already started looking at some of the best cybersecurity practices for your organization. So not to say that companies are not doing it, organizations are not doing it. So everybody is doing it in a way. One is saying that I'll be compliant to a general standard. So in Asia Pacific and Europe, we stick to ISO 27001, which is a very broad-based standard. While this is good to follow and gives you a good cyber hygiene, it is not totally sufficient, because the cyber threat landscape is changing on a constant basis, on a daily basis. So in that case, you cannot get yourself audited once in a year and say that I am doing good, because you're blind to the risks almost for an entire year. So you need to do it something on a continuous basis, so you know what is your security posture. When I say security posture, it only means that you understand your organization, do you understand the weaknesses that we have got across the entire digital assets that you have, maybe applications, assets, IT devices, and so on, and also know what are the threats that is there from the outside and from the inside. So you know exactly where do you stand with respect to all the technologies that you have adopted as well. Now, can you know that on a real-time basis? That is very imperative to know in today's world. You may do a lot of things like a technical analysis, but knowing that even a hospital today or any medical association, medical organization is very diverse. You have assets across the cloud, where you have a lot of the applications that you're serving to your customers from the cloud. You may have complete, cloud workloads, configurations, and cloud is a shared responsibility. You cannot just leave it to the service providers and say that I'm getting security there. So what you build on top of it is responsible for the responsibility of the organizations. And then you start looking at, if there's so many assets, then you have so many issues. So how do you understand these issues? Unless and until you can classify them and say that, okay, what does these issues mean for my organization? So very well, you can find out a lot of issues, but you have to start understanding that, what does it mean for my organization specifically? Because every organization is unique. And then knowing the impact that the organization may have, you have to start prioritizing on what you want to do and what you want to address. So you need to know your security posture. And having known the security posture, where do you want to focus on? Because every organization has got scarce resources in terms of both time and money, and cybersecurity is not your first preference and first priority. So if you're still focusing on cybersecurity, what can you do in that limited resources that you have to get the optimal kind of benefits for the organization? And while doing all these things, can you do it on a very near real-time basis, so you can know your posture at any given time and you can know the impacts of the organization? So you're working with the businesses, understanding your posture, and then seeing how much to invest in your cybersecurity and what results are you getting from that. Can I manage my risk? I have this much of exposure, but ideally my acceptable level is so much. This is what I can live with. So how do I get from what is the current state today to what I need to be? And what I can live with is what whole cyber risk management is about. How do we do it? Again, this is how Synchronize does it, which is in the space of cyber risk management and compliance management as well. So think of this as your organization. If this is your organization, you have a lot of assets. Like I said, cloud assets. You may have your websites externally facing, your web applications, then you have driving a lot of workloads in the cloud. Then you may have mobile applications that you give to your customers, doctor appointments and such. You have some network devices, and some of your employees or your workforce is also working from home today, maybe using their own devices. So you have endpoints, which is another form of threat for your organization. Can you look at all of these things? So the product looks at all of these things. It's a cloud-based product which looks at the various assets and the applications of an organization. Understand what are the weaknesses it's got. Weaknesses is a set of known issues already that exist. It may be from the device that you have bought or the software that you're running as such, or it may be due to the misconfigurations. You're not configured something correctly. You're not configured the password to be strong enough. So in that case, there's something that can be attacked as well. So look at all the weaknesses that is there from the inside, inherently on the assets and the applications. Also look from the outside. So to give you a 360-degree view, also look from the outside and say that how much of this information has been leaked, or what is the activity that is going on now? Where are the attacks happening? And if it is directed towards the pharma companies today, and why? Because there's a lot of research happening for the COVID vaccine. So there is some IP to be stolen over there. So there's a lot more activity happening over there. Can we look at what activities are happening, and do you have some of the weaknesses that can be impacted? So look at all of those things and bring out what are the chances that an organization can get attacked, and where they can get attacked, and what will cause the biggest impact to the organization. If I can find out that early, out of the hundreds and thousands of issues that any organization will have, then I can start addressing that on top priority, which is, can I look at my top risk? Can I look at what is the impact? Can I look at the root cause? And can I also find out the remediation which the product shows, and then go and start remediate that. If not, if you can mitigate, good, or you can remediate it. And after having done all of these, you may still have some residual risks where you may have to transfer those risks in terms of cyber insurance as such. But again, remember, insurance is not a substitute for security. So you will have to get a good security posture first, and then see of how to transfer some of your risks as well. This is from a pure, how do you look at your security posture on a continuous basis, and knowing where you stand so that you can always be reacting. You may be doing well, very well. Your posture may be good, but there are new threats out there that you have to know of. So this is done on a continuous basis because it may be changing on a daily basis. Having done that, can you also map into some of the standards? You may be security and privacy goes hand in hand, so you can map it out to, say, for today, GDPR, which is also to do with privacy. Can you map it out to that and then see where do you stand with respect to GDPR? Are you doing the right things over here? Can you automate that aspect as well? So you know that from a posture perspective, you're doing okay, and also from a compliance perspective, you're okay, because there's also compliance risk that is there for the organization. If you don't comply to some of the standards, then you may also have to pay penalties. Looking at the different stakeholders in the organization, you will see that the executives would like to understand, it is a board level matter today, a cybersecurity risk. So the executives would like to understand, what is my posture? And okay, if I'm investing so much, is it actually improving? Is my exposure decreasing? So that's what they want to know. And a broad view of, how are the risks aggregating? Is it in a different region? Is it in different hospitals? Is it in different departments? So what should I do to bring down the risk? And should I invest more or less? So it will help you make those intelligent decisions of how much you want to invest in this area. The security person who's responsible in the organization will start looking at what are the risks, how do I address these risks, who are going to address those risks, and it finally comes down to what are we going to remediate? Can I look at the issues itself? Can I look at what's the remediation and address that? Going on to what are the frameworks you should adapt? Typically in a cybersecurity framework, what I said is you need to have these kind of categories, which is broadly called IPDRR. If you can remember that, identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. You can think of it as before the incident happens and after the incident happens, right? So first you have to look at what weaknesses you have, what is your posture, and then accordingly where you are weak, you need to start protecting yourself. And in spite of doing all these things, you must still get impacted. So you need to detect if there's you're getting attacked or you're already attacked, and if that is the case, how do you respond quickly? And if there is a consequence, how do you recover from that as well? But while doing all these things, as and when you go towards the right, there is more cost to the organization. So the idea is that you start looking at your issues quite early, find out where you can get impacted and address them early, so that you will see that your overall exposure in the organization decreases. So you'll have to spend less on the other aspects of cybersecurity. So it's already shown that by doing so, 80% of the attacks can be reduced in an organization. So this again acts like support for the chief information security officer in your organization, where you can see clearly a visibility into the entire organization at any given time. Again, you may be wondering, all this is very complicated. It requires a lot of installation and getting a system up. But we're a cloud-based product. Again, what Sunil was mentioning, quick to deploy, and you can start ingesting your assets, all the IT assets into the product, and then start seeing the report within days, and then start, reacting to that. You can see, how you want to get your assets, maybe your applications first to start with, your cloud applications, and then your, on-premise, which is there in hospital premise, or even your workforce, how you can get them, who are people working from the home, onto the same, system, where you can start seeing across all the different assets. And you can do this on a continuous basis. On any given day, any given time, you'll be able to see what is my security posture of the organization. We are working with a couple of organizations helping the landscape here in India. You'll be able to recognize Manipal institution out here. There are different use cases where they're doing some of them are leapfrogging and to say that I want complete automation, right? Everything, because it is humanly impossible to look at all the assets in the organization and look at the security posture at any given time. So they're jumping into automation. And not only this, if you are a vendor for some other organization or you're providing a service, you get asked about your security posture today, because they may be following a standard and you become a vendor to them, which means you are bringing in risk to that organization. So you have to show your security posture as well to say, even if it's a device, what is it? What is the security posture of that service or the device that you're offering to your customers? Synchronize itself has been recognized. We saw Sunil showing the DSCI product portfolio earlier. So Synchronize is being recognized here in the cyber risk and compliance management category. And we're also recognized as one of the top 5 cybersecurity startups out of India. And this week itself, a report was released which said that we were one of the leaders in the cyber risk management space. At the same time, the Singapore cybersecurity map also were featured in the risk and compliance space. And happy to tell that we are part of the Cybersecurity Grand Challenge. We have cleared the first round, and DSCI and METI is conducting the second round now. Yeah, that's brief what I wanted to capture over here, which is it is very important today, given the COVID scenario with the attacks that is increasing and the compliance coming in now, the PDP compliance, PDP standard also coming in into the country. It is very imperative for the healthcare industry to start adopting the best practices if you have not already done so. And how can you start looking at your security posture and then looking at what is best for the organization. So thank you for your patient hearing. You can contact me over here, Chetan at synchronize.co, or you can even reach out to DSCI and they'll help us connect with you.